Almost every Roblox game has an inventory system. Today I'm going to show you how to create a scalable inventory system so you only have to add a couple lines of code with every new item you want to add to your game. By the end of this video, you'll be able to make an inventory and see what the player is trying to equip. We want to go to starter player, we're going to add a screen GUI, and we can name this GUI frame, which this will have all of our items. You want to add a frame, and we'll name this inventory. And we'll set the frame's anchor point to be 0.5.5, the position to be 0.5.5, and the size 0.65 is fine. In here you want to add aspect ratio, and we maybe want to add a stroke. We'll set the aspect ratio to 1.5. We can make the background transparent, or I like to do like 100 simple colors and translucent. Then we can come in here and add another frame as a divider, and we'll set the anchor point to 0.5.5. We'll set the position to 0.5.5, and then we'll set the X size to be 1 and the Y size to be 0.01. We'll make this black, so we'll set it to 0, and then we'll put the position of the Y to 0. We want to down a little bit, so maybe 0.1, maybe a little further so we can fit the title in. And then we're going to come in here and add a text label, and this will be our title. For the position, we'll do on the X 0.02. For size, we'll do 0.6 for the X, and then for the Y we'll do 0.1. We'll come down here and we'll set the labels to say inventory. We'll set it to text align on the left side. We'll scale it. We'll change it to Fredoka. We'll change the color to white. We'll add a stroke over here, and we'll set the stroke thickness to 3 and maybe 4. And then we'll do miter for those smaller devices, and then we can go back to text and set the background transparency to transparent. And then now we need the scroll frame. So also in inventory we'll add the scroll frame, and we'll rename this to just scroll. And we'll set the anchor point to 0.5. Come down and set the Y to 0, or 1 rather. And then the position, we'll say 0.5, and then we'll change the Y to be 1, and the X size to be 1, and the Y size to be the total size of the frame minus how far down this divider line is. So this divider line is 0.15, 0.85. Now come right up to the line. Maybe we want this to be on a higher Z index. There we go. Now we have the scroll. We'll set the background to transparent, and there we go. That is our inventory frame done. Now to open the inventory, I am just going to make a button right here. So we'll come in here and just do image button, and we can move this to be halfway down the side, 0.5 anchor point. For the X, we can say 0.05. This is the button I'll be using now, but you can add this to any other button you have in the game to open your inventory system. Great, now that we have that, let's come in here and let's add a folder, and we'll name this scripts, and then we'll make another folder, and we'll name this templates. In scripts, we want to add a local script, and this is going to be our inventory. And then under our inventory system, we want a module script. Is going to be called item data. This is going to has all the data for all of our items. All right, so we're almost done with the GUI system. Next, we're going to come to the scroll frame we made inside the inventory, and we're going to make another frame, and we're going to call this inventory template. And then in inventory template, we're going to add a aspect ratio constraint, keep it at 1. We're going to add a bool value, and then we're going to change this name to own, and then we're going to add an image button. This is what's going to display the image of our item. And then there we're going to add a UI corner to the image button, and a UI stroke, and a text label. Now this text label will house how many uses the player has, so we'll call this the uses label, and we'll add a stroke to this, as well as a aspect ratio constraint. Now we'll open up the text. We'll set the anchor point to be 0.5. We'll set the position to be 1, 0. We'll set the size to be 0.5. We'll set the background transparency to 1. We'll set the text size to scaled, color to 1, and then we'll put the stroke at 4, and then we'll set it to mitered, and go back into the text and make sure we set it to Fredoka 1, and then the label we can do X0. Great. For the image button, we can set the anchor point to be 0.5, background transparency to be 1, position to be 0.5, and size to be 0.8. And for the frame, we can set the background to be clear, anchor point to be 0.5, position to be 0.5, size to be 0.18. Then we can come to scroll, we can add a UI grid layout, and we can add padding. For the grid layout, we're going to set everything to be cell padding to be 0. And the cell size, we can keep it at 100, that's fine. And for the padding, we can set all of these to be 0.025. We're going to copy that and paste these into all the others, so all the padding's the same. And then we'll have a nice padding. And we can see if we duplicate the template, it creates a nice grid of them. All right, we're almost done. So now we're going to come into here, and I will go to the image button, and I will set the image to be nothing. So we should have a clear frame, and I want the stroke of this image button to be a little bit bigger. So we'll set this to be like 4, give it a nice outline. And then inventory template's done. I like it starting from the center, so if we want to change that, we can come into horizontal alignment and change this to center, and then there we go. So we're going to take the template and we're going to right click it and we're going to cut it, push cut, and we're going to come up to templates. We're going to right click and push paste into. And then now it's in templates, so we can reference it there. I'm going to set the visibility off and the inventory visibility off, and we're going to open the inventory local script we made earlier, and this is where we're going to start scripting. So first, let's get the players. So we want to say players equals game, and then get service players, get the player service, and we're also going to need replicated storage. Get service, replicated storage. Next, we have to define the local player. So local player equals players. Local player, simple enough. And then from the local player, we'll get the GUI, player GUI. Equals local player dot player GUI. Okay, now we got GUI. Now we want to define screen GUI right here. So we'll do local GUI equals player GUI, wait for child GUI. From there, we're going to get the templates folder and the template inside. So local inventory template equals GUI dot templates, wait for child inventory template. And I'm going to just hard define the inventory scroll for this purpose, but you can dynamically do it if you want. So we're going to say local inventory scroll, inv scroll equals GUI.inventory.scroll. Next, we have to require the item data. So we'll do local item data equals script.item data. Oh, we want to require this. Require. I always forget that. All right, since this script is going to load in the player data, we're going to have to figure out what the player data is. What we're going to need to do is come over here to server script service, and we're going to have to add a script. In this script, we're going to have to require replicated storage. So again, game, get service, replicated storage. And we're also going to need players equals game, get service, players. How the client's going to talk to the server is we're going to make a remote function. Replicated storage, we're going to make a new folder, and we'll just call this remote functions. In remote functions, we're going to add a remote function, of course, and we're going to name this get inventory. So now both in the server script and in the local inventory script, we're going to define that. So we're going to say local get inventory function equals replicated storage dot remote functions dot get inventory. And then we're going to copy this, and then the inventory client side, we're going to put the same thing in here, replicated storage. Now we're back in the client side, and we're going to say local player items equals get inventory function, and then we're going to invoke the server. So when the script runs on player join, it's going to invoke the server and ask the server, hey, what are my player items? So now we're going to go back to the server script. We're going to say get inventory function dot on server invoke equals function, and then we're going to be given the player, and we know it's a player, so we can say player, and then we're going to say local inventory data equals player inventory data open bracket player name, and then we're going to return inventory data to the function that calls it from the client. And right here, we're going to hard encode player inventory data. Normally, this will be a data store that you can reference, but I'm not going to be setting up a data store for this. So we're going to say local player inventory data equals open wiggly bracket, and then I'm going to set my name. So my name equals another bracket, and this is where I'm going to define my inventory. So I'm going to have a ball, and then I use uses to determine if the player owns it. So I'll have one use, and then I will copy and paste this 2 more times, and I'll have a cake, and I'll have a car. I'll have 5 cars, 2 cakes. So this is the server script done. Back to the local side, we're going to have to initialize the inventory. So I add a little note here. And to initialize the inventory, we're going to have to go to item data. We're going to have to say what kind of items we have. So I have a copy paste right here. This is typically the data in my items I have. So I'll have the name, the class, a description, color of it, an image, if it's enabled, and the price of it. The reason why I'm putting all this on the client is so the client can see this on load it initially. For now, price isn't really necessary for the inventory system. We would use this in a shop kind of system. So now that we have items listed out in item data, back to the client side inventory script, and we can say for item name and item data in pairs items data. Let's change this right here to items data so we know. And then we want to say do, and we say if item data enabled equals true, then we want to make a new item. Look at that. AI system already knows that almost. So we want to say local new item equals inv template clone, and then we want to say new item dot visible equals false. And then we say new item dot parent equals inventory scroll frame Infinite scroll. And we say new item dot name equals item name. And then we're going to say new item dot image button dot image equals item data dot image. And then we want to say new item dot image button dot image color 3 equals item data dot color. And now we want to get the new item again, and we want to add a tag to it. And the tag is going to be the item data dot class new item dot image button, and then we're going to add the tag inventory item, and then we're good here. So now it should load all of them in. Now we want to load in the player items. So we want to say load player items. If player items does not equal nil, then for item name, comma item data in pairs player items do. If items data item name dot enabled equals true, then so we're checking if it's enabled, and if it's enabled, then yes, we want the player to be able to see it. We want to say local item equals in scroll find first child item name. So now we have the item in the scroll frame. Now I want to say item dot visible equals true. Then we want to say item dot image button dot uses label dot text equals x dot dot item data dot uses. And then you want to say dot item dot own dot value equals true because the player owns the item. If item data dot uses is greater than 0, then that's how we know if the player has it. Copy this into here. And then there we go. This is the local side done. Now we have to make the button work so we can open and close the inventory. So I'm going to name this open inventory. In here, we can define the button, goal open in button equals GUI dot open inventory. Now we want to say open in button dot mouse button one click connect function, and then we'll just say, yeah, there it already knows it. GUI.inventory.visible equals not GUI inventory.visible. So now it'll be a toggle to open and close the inventory. So now if we push play here, now if I click this and see the inventory, there we go. We see our items in our inventory, but they don't do anything now. So let's add some functionality to that. All right, so we're back at the main screen, and we're gonna add another script called button actions. So we're gonna come in here, enter a module script, and we're gonna name this button actions. And we're gonna change module and say button actions. And earlier in inventory, when we were loading in each inventory item, we have this tag inventory item. So now we can set a function in here, and we'll say button actions dot invitem button. So we're going to pass the button through, and this is going to connect the inventory item to a command pretty much. So we can say button dot mouse button one up, and we're going to connect that to a function. And then we're going to print for now that the player is trying to equip, and then it's going to be button.parent.name. And then now we have button actions laid out. We can come back to the inventory, and we're going to require this as well. So local button actions equals require script.parent.button actions. And down here, when we're loading it in, button actions dot inf item, and then we're going to get the new item image button, and then there we go. If we push play now and we open the inventory, so we have these items. If I click it, it says player is trying to equip cake or ball or car. Obviously you would do more than a print statement, so now let's add the server check functionality, and then you guys can take it from there. So we're going to have to go back into replicated storage and in remote functions. Let's make another remote function, and we'll call this equip item. And then in this module script, we're going to have to reference that. We'll say local equip item equals game get service replicated storage dot remote functions dot equip item. And then right here, we can say equip item invoke server button dot parent dot name local can, and we'll say local can equip equals this. And then we'll print can equip. Now nothing's going to happen, so we're going to have to take this, and on the server side again, we're going to come here, and we're going to define this on here as well. So come up here with the other one, define it, local equip item equals rs, replicated storage remote functions equip item. Then we can say equip item, now onServe invoke equals function. We're going to get the player, and we're going to get the button, or the item name, and this is going to be a string. And then we can say if player inventory data, player.name, item name, and then dot uses is greater than 0, then we're going to also print here player has item, and then we'll put an else if they don't own it. We'll also print player does not own this item. So we'll put car down to 0. I have 0 uses. If the player does not own the item, we want to return false. If the player does own the item, we want to return true. So now if we try and equip the item, and we own it, this should say true, and the server should say player has item, and if we try and equip it and we don't own it, it's going to say player does not own this item, and this is going to return false. So I'll come with that out, and if we push play, I open the inventory, we see these are the only two I see. Player has item, true, player has item. But if I manually go into here, into the GUI and the scroll frame and go to the car and manually set it visible, now I try and click it, it says player does not own this item. So that's the anti-cheating process. And the false and true statements that print out here, you can do whatever you want for the GUI. So you can warn the player like, hey, you don't actually own this item. Or you can say equipping item. And then on the server, you do the actual logic. So player has item, and we'll say item name. Player does not have this item. Item name. Now if I click play again, it's going to say, yep, I have this item ball, I have the item cake, and then coming in here, enabling the car, even though I don't own it, when I click it, it's going to say player does not own this item, car, false. So the player can't tell the server to give them something they don't own because the server knows. That's how anti-cheat works in Roblox. This was my first time making a tutorial video, so let me know how I did. Let me know where I can improve. If you have any questions, leave a comment and join the Discord. I'll leave the link in the description. This is a sneak peek at a game we're working on right now. It's called Shuffle Lobby. But yeah, here's the inventory system we just made. If you want to learn how to do the tool tips, let me know. I like the animations for the buttons, let me know. If you like the video and you stayed this late, you might as well subscribe. Don't forget to leave a like. Hold on, I have to beat one of my own game. For what? Help. Fading plates grow plate size at random shapes. How am I supposed to make that jump? Actually, I'm goated. Hold on. I'm goated with the sauce.